Hello, everybody. This is the newly released or newly recorded workshop for empaths in audio format. My name is Joe, and I have been aware of my abilities to read energy since I was a child. In 2014, I had a sudden spiritual awakening, and eventually, over the years, I learned to manage and develop my abilities. And at that point, I began helping others with theirs. Today, I identify as a spiritual psychic medium. Over the years, I've developed my abilities and have added various modalities along the way. I use numerology, astrology, human design within the Akashic records. I read soul contracts. And I've been an intuitive development coach since I left the corporate world in 2016. I do my absolute best work when helping empaths, intuitives, the spiritually capable, connect the dots, develop their abilities, and align with the goals of their soul blueprint. This means that you see yourselves as having character traits that are out of alignment with your soul's blueprint versus character flaws. So that's just a little bit about me. I've wanted to redo this presentation for a while, and I figured I'd just do it via audio so that it's a little bit more accessible for people. Today, we are going to look at the science of an empath, how to engage energy management, 5 empath types, energy depleters, and narcissists. We're going to look at shielding and protection. We're going to look at boundaries, chakras, crystals, and how to recharge your energy. So I first want to start off by saying empathic abilities are sometimes referred to as a blessing and also a curse. But they are not a curse, and you are not a sponge. You are not too sensitive. The empath is the most powerful person in the room. So let's define what that means. Being an empath is the ability to experience the feelings and emotions of another person in your body as if they are yours. But they're not yours, they are theirs, and therein lies the challenge, and therein lies why people feel disempowered. Being empathic is identification or empathizing with the feelings, thoughts, or attitudes of others. It's a conscious awareness between two people. So this is one of the reasons it's so difficult for empaths to set boundaries. It's much harder to enforce a boundary when we literally feel their disappointment, resentment, sadness, etc. When you're feeling what they feel, it's much harder for you to set those stronger boundaries. And this audio is hopefully going to help you understand how to do that in a way that feels good for you and the other person. So first, let's talk about empathic ability, because it exists on a spectrum. And within this spectrum are 3 levels. And though they have similarities, each really distinguishes itself from the other in subtle but really important ways. Okay, so first we have an HSP, and that's the highly sensitive person. The HSP has a higher capacity to sense subtle energy, very sensitive to the emotions of others, and just intensely empathic. Well, then you have the empath. And the empath possesses all the abilities and senses of the HSP, but also has the ability to understand what others are feeling by actually experiencing those emotions as if they are their own. And that third level is the clairsentient. And clairsentients have mastered their HSP to the degree that they are able to obtain information and details from the emotions that they tap into. And clairsentience is the intuitive ability or capability of sensing or feeling and gleaning information. It's an advanced form of empathy that gives you the ability to receive intuitive messages and information through the feelings and emotions of others, your feelings and emotions, or any physical sensations. And we'll talk in depth about that in the workshop for intuitives that I planned also to re-record in the coming weeks. So we'll start with the science of being an empath and how it contains 3 really cool aspects. Neurons, it's the first one. Humans have a group of brain cells that are responsible for compassion, and these are called the mirror neuron. And empaths are thought to have extra sensitive mirror neurons, which enable us to connect with the emotions and feelings of others. So there's the science behind empathy. In contrast, sociopaths and narcissists are thought to lack the ability to feel empathy due to an inactive mirror neuron system. And narcissism also runs on a spectrum. Then you have dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical produced naturally in the body, and it's associated with our pleasure responses. Introverted empaths tend to have a higher sensitivity to dopamine and therefore need less to feel happy than extroverts. So this is why most empaths feel content when they're alone, because you need less external stimulation. I won't say most empaths, but that's why some empaths feel content when you're alone. Now, extroverts, however, enjoy the energy of dopamine and seek out situations to experience it. So to clarify, you can be extroverted and an empath. I myself consider myself to be an extroverted introvert. So you can word salad it to identify any way that you want, but when you have a sensitivity to dopamine, you need less around you, less going on around you to feel happy. And then we have synesthesia, sort of the third cool aspect of being an empath. And synesthesia is a phenomenon where you experience one of your senses through another. For example, when you hear music, you may taste in your mouth tangerines, or you may see with your mind's eye certain shapes. Maybe you see a word or a name, you might hear a sound. It also involves the more unusual abilities of clairgustance, which is clear taste, and clairaudience, which is clear smell, which is why I use those two as examples, just because they're more unusual, but they're typically involved in synesthesia. So another example is you might hear the word street and smell or taste chocolate cake. There is one other form of synesthesia. I'm really struggling on that word. And it's called mirror touch, which is also known as medical empathy, where you can actually feel the emotions and sensations of others in your own physical body as if they are your own. And we will talk a little bit more about that one because there's some things that you need to know, practices that you need to have in place if you consider yourself to be a medical empath. What the science all boils down to is that every empathic interaction is an energy exchange that goes beyond a simple greeting, because there are so many different ways an empath is able to sense, feel, and connect with the energy of others. Simply put, empaths are energy channels. Okay. So since you are a channel of energy naturally without even thinking of it, here's why it can feel so hard to shield yourself, which we will also talk about in detail later. When it comes to our energy source, it's long been taught that our soul resides inside our body, but the science doesn't really support that. Our soul does not reside inside our body. Our soul is energy, and energy cannot be contained. Our body is supported by our soul, which surrounds our physical body. So To give you a visual, it's much like the amniotic sac that encompasses the fetus pre-birth in the womb. And then once it's born, that amniotic sac becomes our energy field, as within, so without. And that human energy field has many different names. The toroidal field, the aura, the etheric field, the electromagnetic field, the soul, the energy field. Listen, whatever you call it, it's what keeps our brain firing and our heart beating. Energy flows in one energy center, we'll say the crown, and it moves down through the chakra system and then wraps around itself to return to the first incoming energy center. It extends about 15 feet around us, above and below. And most interactions between people are carried out within our toroidal field. If you're within 15 feet of something or of someone, you're going to be within their toroidal field, their etheric field, their aura. So this is why we subconsciously determine whether or not we vibe with someone when our energy fields come into contact with each other. But there are a couple other reasons that we're not, or we don't consider ourselves to be an energetic match for everyone that we meet. So first, let's talk about physical and emotional frequency. It exists on a scale. And when different vibrations come into proximity of each other, after a little time, they'll begin to vibrate at the same frequency. They sort of sync up and find resonance. This ties into the law of attraction, but it's also why we don't want to be around people that don't feel good to us. It's because we're not finding resonance, or their frequency is causing ours to feel out of alignment or out of sync with what we're used to feeling. It's also why when we have to be around people who feel off to us, maybe a colleague at work or a social setting, or family members that you have to be around and you can't escape, that's why they may feel better, but we feel worse. It's because of the science. Our frequencies are starting to sync up, and if we are used to vibing at a higher level, it feels draining to us. But for the originally lower vibrational or lower frequency person, it feels awesome. And that, my friends, is an energy vampire, which we'll touch on a little deeper in a bit. But I don't love the term energy vampire because it's often unintentional. So for the purposes of clarity, I'll use the term energy depletor. I'm just going to make up a word. There's someone who depletes our energy depleters. So at this time, I also want to just note, so that I don't forget, a really great way to raise your vibe after being around an energy depleter is to listen to solfeggio frequencies for 20 to 30 minutes. It just allows your personal vibration to find resonance with the frequency of the music being played. YouTube has thousands of these free meditations. So if you feel the need, or you're looking for something to raise your vibe, slap on some headphones, find a solfeggio frequency on YouTube, and just relax and let the music do the work of bringing you back to resonance, to syncing your frequencies back up. I also want to briefly touch on the ability of connecting to spirit, connecting to your spirit guides, guardians, angels, higher power via your intuitive abilities as it relates to frequency. So your ability to connect to spirit is a simple energy frequency compatibility. That's it. That's all it is. We think, I have to train for years to be able to do this, and I have to take all the intuitive development and psychic development classes and all that stuff. What it comes down to, it's when you are compatible within the frequency, you will be able to receive those messages. So if you struggle to feel or sense energy, you may need to raise your frequency to find resonance with the frequency that you wish to connect to. Again, we'll get into that Not later in this audio, but definitely in the workshop for intuitives. So there is a frequency scale, and just to give you sort of like a visual in your head, source consciousness vibrates at 1,000 hertz, megahertz, I think they're called. Source consciousness, so God, goddess, universe, source. That's the vibrational frequency of God, okay? The human being who is experiencing anger or hatred or rage is vibrating at 150 megahertz. So you see the difference there. The emotion of love and faith is 500. So you might have heard the term 500 and above. That's where you want to vibrate. Hope and optimism is 400. Willingness to be is 300. So you want to stay out of, grief, which is 75. Shame, guilt, unworthiness, powerlessness, that's 20 megahertz. And then, of course, death is 0. So when you're feeling shame, guilt, unworthiness, and powerlessness, and you're having a hard time manifesting, you're having a hard time doing any of your spiritual practices, it's because you are not a vibrational match for being open to those other energies that can come in and guide you. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get guided. It doesn't mean that you suck. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy or nothing's ever going to happen for you. It's a scale to help you understand what level you're at, what frequency you're at, and what maybe the work you need to do in order to be able to open to love, faith, expectation, peace, joy, enlightenment, appreciation, and gratitude. By the way, whenever you hear people say, give gratitude, that's like the highest form of raising your frequency. Literally, it is. Gratitude and feeling empowered is 900 megahertz. So this is a frequency scale. You can Google this on the Google, and you can see it for yourself. But it's really interesting, and it's a good frame of reference to have, so that you're sort of understanding what your emotions are sort of a vibrational match for. All right. So my dog is barking in the background, if you can hear. He's probably angry at some squirrel. So the next thing I want to talk about is, how do empaths engage with energy? There are 3 ways: absorption, transmutation, and projection. Okay, so the first one is absorption. And although we can absorb energy through any of our chakra energy centers, the solar plexus is where we receive the energy of others. It's the home base of the empath, I guess you would say. And absorption can leave you feeling physically exhausted and emotionally drained, right? Because you're walking around in absorption mode, and energy depleters are a common challenge, and you're taking everybody's stuff in. You are trying to heal everybody. You're a people pleaser. You're doing all the things and taking everything on yourself, but you're just holding on to it. That's also going to show up as physical ailments too in your body, especially if you're a medical intuitive. All right. The next way is called transmutation, and that's when we intentionally and unintentionally filter the energy of another through our physical body and personal energy. Okay, this is a form of channeling, and it can change the vibe around you. However, it can also be draining and exhausting when not done properly, and when you're not actually when you don't actually have a practice to clear yourself, bring yourself back into resonance, that sort of thing. Energy workers and healers use this technique to intentionally flood the body or an area with source energy. I will use transmutation a lot of times. I just practice it in line at the grocery store, especially if you're in line around somebody who is particularly disagreeable. I will just visualize taking source energy in through my head, and I will just project it out my heart into the space around me. That doesn't require ethical consent, because I am taking in source energy and I'm just sort of sharing it. The last way that empaths engage energy is called projection. And it's not the same projection where we project our emotions onto others, but kind of, it's the same concept. But projection is the intentional channeling of source energy, not your personal energy, but source energy. It's similar to transmutation, where you're taking it in and you're projecting it out from your heart center. So you want to visualize it as a beam of light coming from your heart and traveling out in front of you to a person, animal, object, or situation, like a Care Bear. That's what I always love likening this to. How is that different from transmutation? So transmutation is you saying, I'm taking in source energy, I'm going to transmute it and send it back out. Maybe you send it out with an intention for happiness and joy or whatever. But projection is the intentional channeling of source energy, which you're actually still doing with transmutation, but you're typically working with a client, right? You're typically working with someone one-on-one, you have their consent, and you're doing some type of energy work, intuitive work, healing work, that sort of thing. Now, the electromagnetic field of the human heart is 5,000 times more powerful than the magnetic field of the brain. And that is one of the coolest stats to me about heart-brain coherence. But they also work together really beautifully. And when energy is created within your heart center with intention, and then you project it outward, again, for healing or intuitive work, it is incredibly powerful. So, 3 ways empaths can engage with energy is absorption, transmutation, and projection. So I want to talk a little bit about the heart-brain coherence technique and give it to you. I want to teach you how to generate and project heart energy. All right, so don't do this if you're listening while you're driving, of course, but I want you to close your eyes, feet flat, back straight, and just take a few deep breaths in through your nose. And then take long exhales out your mouth. You're going to do this, 3 or 4 times, because what you want to do is put yourself down into the alpha state. You want to feel relaxed. And then you're going to bring your focused attention to your heart. For a physical connection, place your hand over your heart. And next, you're going to hold a clear vision of something that feels good in your mind's eye. It might be a person, a situation, a place, an accomplishment. And as you create this picture, allow those feelings to fill your body and a smile to form as you enjoy re-experiencing this moment. This engages your physical body. You've got your hand on your heart, you're smiling, you're engaging the physical body, and you're holding that vision until you start to feel the energy build in your body. Once you feel it in your heart and your hands and your legs, maybe you're smiling or giggling. Maybe you are, you're just engaged with this energy. And then I want you to expand it out around yourself. Visualize sending these feelings from your heart to your brain as that healing light energy completely surrounds you, expand it out. Take a notice of your body. Notice any crown tingles in your hands or your feet or your heart or your belly, your shoulders. Then take it one step further, and I want you to see that energy expand and project out into the space around you. Maybe your house, the room that you're in, your home, your city, your state. Just see it expanding out around you as far as you'd like. I want you to see this as healing light, and bring in smell, bring in touch, really empower your visualization. And just sit in this as long as you like, and that is you practicing a heart-brain coherence technique. You're generating heart energy and you're using it intentionally. This is also fantastic for manifestation and one of the most powerful and impactful practices for manifesting, because it's also sort of triggers what's called the reticular activation system, which you may have heard of, in which the brain doesn't know the difference between actual experience and visualization. So that's another reason why visualization is such a powerful concept and practiced by all of the top manifestation coaches and leaders. Just it's a really powerful practice. So there you go. That's what you do, and that's how you actually generate heart brain energy, but also manifest. All right, let's talk about energy depleters and some common signs that you are around them or they are around you. So, engaging in conversations or interactions that exhaust us is a common form of unknowing transmutation. Energy vampires have no idea this is happening other than they love talking to us and generally enjoy being around us. They walk away feeling better, but you feel drained and exhausted because of that resonance. If you have energy vampires, I said I wasn't going to call them vampires, didn't I? Well, I'm not going to cut and edit here, but I'm going to start calling them energy depleters again. If you have energy depleters in your life, start determining if you have the emotional capacity for this interaction or conversation. If not, it's time to learn how to disengage, walk away, or verbally let them know that you do not have the ability to engage at the moment. Everyone needs someone to voice their frustrations with, but energy depleters constantly dump their frustrations, bad days, and negative feelings on anyone who will listen. This is the difference between venting and dumping. All right, so venting. Venting is when an individual accepts accountability for their role in the problem and is looking for a solution or resolution. That's venting. Dumping is like verbal vomiting with little or no desire to seek insight and resolution, right? They just want to complain and, and I get it. Sometimes we do need to complain, and we don't want the person that we're complaining to try to fix it, right? I think again, that's the difference between venting, but then also dumping. Sometimes we don't want to fix it, but dumping is nonstop, and you're looking to seek. You're not looking for resolution at any point. So a good practice to adopt to avoid being dumped on is to ask them if you are there to listen or problem solve, because this helps you understand what is expected of you and gives you the opportunity to decide if you have the emotional capacity for the conversation in the first place. This is also a good practice if you are or have a relationship with a human design projector. Projectors, they're a little bit of a hybrid, right? Because they gain clarity by talking it out, but they're not necessarily asking for insight or resolution because they find that within themselves as they talk it out. Right? So there's my little human design segue. At some point, I will venture into talking about human design. But right now, we're going to get back to the topic of empaths. So to wrap up energy depleters, keep in mind that simply listening and holding space can be very draining if the person just wants to dump on you emotionally with zero desire to gain a little insight and clarity. So most emotionally healthy people will want to find resolution to their challenges, but it is a good practice to understand what their needs are prior to helping them find resolution. Okay, especially if you're an intuitive teacher or coach. Sometimes we don't want to be coached or taught. Sometimes we just want our friend to listen. All right. So now that you know why you're able to do what you do as an empath, let's identify how you exhibit your empathic abilities by identifying your specific empath type. So determining this will give your empathic abilities an advantage, understanding and mastering how you perceive energy. Okay, so The first question is, how many types of empaths are there? And I will say that's a highly subjective topic, but for brevity, I've pared it down to 5. But before we explore them, I want to clarify that a simple internet search will give you empath types such as intuitive empath, telepathic empath, precognitive empath, medium empath, I've even heard. These are not empath types. These are intuitive capabilities and skills the empath exhibits. These are not types. We're going to talk about the types right now. So the first type is the emotional empath. The emotional empath feels and processes the emotions of others both knowingly and unknowingly. And all empaths display a degree of heightened sensitivity to other people's emotions, but in emotional empaths, this is their strongest trait. Okay? Then we have locational empaths, where they feel the emotions and energy of a place or location. They can detect energy in a room. They can feel residual or lingering energy. Locational empaths can become overwhelmed in crowded spaces or at emotionally charged events because they absorb the emotions of those around them. Then we have physical or medical empaths, and they're different from other types of empaths because their focus is primarily on the sensations and experiences of the physical body. So they often feel others' symptoms in their own body. This very unique ability allows them to provide a different kind of support and healing to those around them. If medical empathy is something that you possess, learning to strengthen your own energy field will intensify this gift and allow you to turn it off when you're not with clients. Because physical medical empaths are typically healers of some type. They're those really gifted healers where you're like, what? How did you do that? Or how do you do that? So to develop this ability, I recommend a certification program with someone like medical intuitive teacher Tina Zion. I believe she's out of Detroit. She's she's not a very good friend of mine, but a very good friend of mine who is also a registered nurse, took her class in person and was quite pleased with the content. So if you haven't looked into Tina Zion or some other type of medical intuitive training, I definitely recommend that you do. Next, we have flora and fauna empaths, and those are plant and animal communicators who can sense their well-being and their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. I have a little flora and fauna in me, and the flora, plant communicators, that actually developed when I moved to Oregon because the foliage and the plants there are just next level. But often preferring the company of animals to people, fauna empaths have a deep connection to animals that allows them to relax, much more so than with human beings. And a flora empath can pick up on the energy of plants and vegetation, understanding what it needs to thrive. This is a unique ability, and flora empaths make excellent landscapers, gardeners, and florists. So one of the things that I learned when my flora empathy started developing was that I can communicate with trees. It's the craziest thing, and I don't say it out loud and tell people I can talk to trees, but literally I can feel the emotions. And the most beautiful thing about these trees is trees are so supportive of us. They produce oxygen for us. They literally want us as human beings to thrive. They are true forest spirits. They're spirit guides. They're guardians of the earth. And that's why it's so important for us to be good caregivers and caretakers of the earth, because the sentient beings that inhabit this earth, the rocks and the plants and the trees and the water, they're freaking actual legitimate spiritual beings. So anyway, that's why I don't talk about it, but I love being in nature and just absorbing the love of the earth, because it truly does love us. It's the coolest thing. All right, so then the last empath is called an earth empath, which is different from flora and fauna. So, earth empaths will often feel intense emotions when the earth is going through trauma transition, kind of like it is now, and will also pick up on the sadness or fear in certain geographical areas. This type of empath is deeply sensitive to changes in the earth itself. And some earth empaths claim to feel the pain of earthquakes and forest fires and maybe even predict them before they happen. They'll feel the emotions and energy geographically too, like of a place or location. And so they will often want to leave when the energy starts to feel heavy or unpleasant. So, even though I'm an earth sign, I don't consider myself to be an earth empath, but I will say that when I was driving from Portland to the coast in Oregon, there's a lot of logging companies and they will clear the land, and so you'll look up at the mountain and it'll just be tree stumps, just miles and miles of tree stumps, and it's very it's sad. It just hit me in my gut. And they do replenish with replanting, and you know what I mean, like the logging companies are required to actually create sustainable, practices and stuff. But it's still really jarring when you see this sort of barren hillside where it was once these majestic trees. So, all right. So, we may exhibit all 5 types of empaths to some degree, but one or two may develop a bit stronger than with others. I think I have all of them, and most empaths that I work with have all of them, but definitely there's one or two that are just a bit stronger. So, based on these definitions, how many do you strongly identify with? Next, let's talk about empaths and narcissists. So, I'm just going to briefly touch on this topic because there is so much out there on the interweb. And my only suggestion is to avoid any piece of information that feels even slightly disempowering when you are doing your own research. Okay? So, if you have a narcissist in your life, it's important to understand how their minds work and how it impacts the empath. So, let's review a few tactics they use to get and maintain control, because that's ultimately what they're doing. So, when our self-worth or happiness depends on others, it offers the narcissist the perfect opportunity to gain control by making you feel valued. Narcissists target people who tend to be codependent. Compliments and excessive flattery are the first stage of winning a codependent empath over. They are masters at manipulation. And eventually, they begin to play games with your emotions using tactics like displeasure, shaming, and guilting because they want to maintain control. So what they'll do is they'll run hot and cold with their affection to keep you from feeling confident in your relationship within yourself and to make you question your emotional and mental health. This happens all the time. They will evade and avoid. They will make irrational arguments. They will deflect, project, and gaslight. A narcissist's actions will never, ever, ever align with their words, and they will drag you into yet another cycle of control and manipulation with each new empty promise. The empath will never, ever, ever be enough to change a narcissist. And once you finally accept this truth, that's when you will be able to walk away. All right. So that's all I'm going to say about that topic. If you do find yourself to be codependent or have codependent tendencies, I do recommend talking that out with a qualified professional mental health practitioner. Okay, shielding and protection. So one of the biggest, most ridiculous myths out there is that an empath requires shielding. I'm going to say that again. One of the biggest myths out there is that an empath requires shielding. Our abilities as an empath give us the power to transmute the energy we connect to. We've already talked about that. So the idea that we must shield or protect ourselves can be disempowering, and it does go against the very nature of an empath. We are intensely sensitive and, as a result, intensely powerful. The universe armed us with some pretty badass tools and abilities. So rather than shielding yourself, learn to manage and transmute the energy you come into contact with. Empaths are not vulnerable sponges who need to shield themselves. It's exhausting and it will not work long term. So-called shields are not sustainable. Why? Because you're putting up a shield from a mindset that is based in fear. Fear that you aren't powerful enough to protect your own energy field. And even if you say, no, I'm protecting myself, this is out of self-love, that's not a shield. That's powerlessness. And it's the lowest emotion on the emotional guidance scale that we looked at earlier. So I recommend to master your empathic abilities, you'll first want to strengthen your personal and energetic boundaries with a consistent practice. So honestly, if it makes you feel better to shield while you simultaneously work on developing your personal energetic boundaries, please do. Please. But I want you to understand that you're sending out two different beliefs to the universe. So that can cause challenges within your practice. Because when we truly believe we can transform or reject any energy we come into contact with, we are no longer an attraction for those lower vibrational energies. Like attracts like. So as you learn to manage and master your personal energy frequency, you'll begin to attract people and situations of the same frequency, and you'll begin to repel people and situations that do not have the same frequency or of lower frequency. It's resonance, it's the law of attraction, and it's science. And like I said, the science is your shield. That's your shield. The science is your shield. Okay? And again, if you're just like, nope, I don't like that, Joe, then you do you, boo. You shield and do all of the shielding practices if it makes you feel safe and good and it works for you. All right. So now I want to talk about holding space for others, because that's how empaths help and heal without feeling exhausted. It involves being present and supportive for someone without trying to fix them or their problems. This is the whole, we're looping back to the venting versus dumping thing. And so it's basically the same thing, but I did want to sort of highlight it as an individual topic, holding space for others, right? And so the goal is to create a compassionate environment where people can share their thoughts and emotions without fear of judgment. And as you sit with that person through a difficult time, listening fully so they don't have to do it alone. So this brings us to boundaries again. So a lack of boundaries creates challenges, and empaths often struggle with setting boundaries. Why? Because we're afraid of the reaction of others, because we can literally feel the disappointment, anger, or resentment our boundaries create in others, particularly when we say no. So we avoid the no. We subconsciously place more importance on what others think of us instead of placing importance on our own needs. That is such a huge challenge but it's something I really wanted to bring to your attention because it is what will help you feel empowered by boundaries. When you place more importance on what others think of you instead of on your own needs, you have a lack of boundaries. So you flip the script. When you start to place more importance on your needs than what others think of you, well, that's when your boundaries are strong. So let's talk about the 3 boundaries that are critical to build your practice around. Okay, so there's energetic boundaries, there's emotional boundaries, and there's physical boundaries. Those 3. So let's start with energetic. And I recommend claiming your energetic boundaries with a simple practice. It's so quick and easy. You just find a quiet place to sit or stand and take several deep breaths in through your nose, exhaling out your mouth. You want to allow your exhale to last twice as long as your inhale because this triggers your body's relaxation response and helps you settle into that alpha state. That's very important when you are claiming your energetic boundaries. Okay? Deep breath in, long breath out, 3 or 4 times. Then I want you to visualize a beautiful light entering the top of your head. This is source energy, any color you prefer, vibrant, soothing, and empowering. See it fill your head, moving down into your neck and your shoulders, filling your heart center, down into your belly and your hips, your legs, surrounding you completely, the light and power of source energy joining with yours, taking a moment to feel it on your skin within your heart center, and setting the intention that no one can take from your energy or intrude upon it without your permission, which of course you will not give. So now you're going to close it out with some sort of formalizing phrase or mind's eye image. Ideally, in order to see tangible changes in your ability to maintain sort of a strong energy field around you, you're going to want to incorporate this technique into your daily practices. So when I work with my empath and intuitive development coaching clients, I recommend practicing 3 times a day for 30 days. So it might seem like a lot, but really, once you learn how to do this, it can be done in under 60 seconds, really. It's a quick breathing, visualization, and then sort of setting the intention and grounding in that intention. All right, so let's talk about those 3 different, those were your energetic boundaries. Let's talk about emotional boundaries next. So emotionally, when you're setting boundaries, the first thing is to know what you need. Develop an awareness of what you need more of and challenge yourself to ask for it. We have to ask for our needs to be met in order for our needs to be met. And if it's hard for you to ask for your needs to be met, there's deeper work for you to do. Don't question whether you deserve things in life. Simply know what you want and go for them. We definitely don't get what we don't ask for, so focus on what you want rather than questioning whether you're worthy to receive. And again, remember that when we ask what we want, it could trigger us to be afraid of the reaction of others because you will feel the disappointment, anger, or resentment that those boundaries or asking for your needs can create. But also, you can feel the joy and the love and the support, and more than likely, if you're engaged with a healthy person or somebody who has, their own ability to set healthy boundaries, they're going to say, absolutely, of course I can give that to you. Thank you for asking. The second emotional boundary is to speak your truth. Speak your truth and let the world know what you will and won't accept. So this is a little bit different that, the first one is knowing what you need, but also asking for it. But this one is speaking your truth. That means staying true to your feelings, your opinions, and your values, no matter what anyone else may think. That is very important now. Especially with what's going on in the world. When you hear words, phrases, slanders, opinions, ideologies that are not supportive of the greater good of all, we'll just say, speak up when you're experiencing ideologies and words that are not supportive of you and your needs and your boundaries. Speak up. And then the last one, the last, I guess, action for setting strong emotional boundaries is to say no. Stop saying yes in order to feel safe or avoid negative reactions. Avoid feeling negative reactions. Empaths often put the needs of others before ourselves. And you see how these are all tied together. We don't need the approval of others. Know your worth. Stop saying yes to things that you dislike. Choose to live your life doing things that support your joy. And if that happens to be helping others, sticking up for others, speaking up for others, healing others, then do it with joy. Okay? Emotional boundaries. And then the last category is physical boundaries. So even though you're calling in that energy and you're surrounding yourself and you're filling your body and surrounding yourself with that light, there are also actual legitimate physical boundaries that can help you. First one is ground yourself. And I know that people say that a lot. What does that actually mean? Okay. It's putting your body in a place or a space from which your body can draw in the earth's energy. That's what grounding is. Okay. So you can practice earthing by walking barefoot on soil, grass, or even concrete. It doesn't matter. You are pulling in the earth's energy. Okay. In the winter, if you can't go outside barefoot, walk on wood. You can run water over your hands, warm water in the winter, cool water in the summer. You can breathe deeply and you can savor a food, drink, or scent. All of those things are you grounding into your body, giving it the ability to draw in energy. That's what grounding means. Claim your space. When we believe that we can transform or reject any energy that we come into contact with, we're no longer a vibrational match for negative energies. So claiming our energetic space sets a strong physical boundary for people and energies that are not a vibrational match. So when you walk into a room and let's say you're walking into a meeting and you have like beef with this person and you're both in front of the HR and you have to talk about it or whatever, right? Walk in there and claim your space. Visualize, call in the energy, fill up that entire fucking room with your energy and claim that space. Because that presents a strong physical boundary. And also what you're doing is the third element of physical boundaries, which is standing in your power. It's being comfortable in your own skin and taking up space without apologizing for it. And I know you have to have the right mindset for that. You have to truly feel that. But if you acknowledge any shadow or subconscious fears that are associated with being powerful, that's important because it's going to help you resist the urge to play small. Acknowledge them and say, hey, I'm a little bit fearful of standing in my power. Sometimes when I speak my truth, it isn't always accepted openly because people aren't used to hearing my truth, or I have fears associated with speaking up because of early childhood caregivers. Whatever it is, acknowledge them and sort of give that inner child, let that inner child know that you're safe, you're standing in your power, and then you're not going to play small, and you're going to shine your light, and you're going to show others that it's okay to do that as well. Okay, so now let's talk about the chakra system and how that relates to being an empath. Healthy chakras directly impact the flow of energy in and out of our body. And empaths sense and channel through our chakra, so our energy centers need a lot of care. So yes, energy work is important. Reiki, healing touch, quantum, and pranic healing. There are a ton of different options out there, but more importantly is the care that you provide yourself. So with your root chakra, you're gonna provide the care that you need by getting your basic needs met. Water, moving your body, good food. You support your sacral chakra by experiencing authentic joy every day. Your solar plexus, You're going to prioritize and take care of yourself. This gives your solar plexus chakra energy center what you need. To give your heart chakra what it needs, show yourself compassion. You matter. Your throat chakra, express your needs to feel supported. Ask for your needs to be met. Your third eye chakra energy center, do the inner work and reflect on your behavior patterns. Give yourself credit for the work that you've done and the growth that you've accomplished. And then your crown chakra is sit with your mind to allow your intuition to come through. It's very simple. Again, our energy centers, they need care, but the care we give ourselves is the most important. Okay, so now let's talk about crystals. So I just want to start this part of the conversation off with a disclaimer and say that my beliefs about cleansing and charging crystals are not necessarily mainstream. I learned to work with them from a crystal master who was trained by a geologist. So the standard woo beliefs do not apply, but please hear me out, and anything that doesn't resonate, just let it pass through, because we all love those beautiful rocks. So it's commonly thought that crystals repel negative energy, okay? But crystals are not bug spray. Instead, what they do is they give off a continuous, uninterrupted flow of energy at their natural frequency that we draw upon. It's the same as two people coming together and finding resonance. And due to resonance, when we hold or wear them, they release energy in response to our energy field. So using them to repel negative energy, it's simply not going to work. It's science. Again, they enhance and transmute frequencies they come into contact with. So if we are experiencing lower vibrational emotions, the properties of the crystal could be generally ineffective, or in some situations even amplify those lower vibrational energies. Now, our personal vibration constantly changes as we're exposed to other people, social media, the news, traffic, etc. But crystals, on the other hand, have a consistent energy frequency, and it never changes. Why? Because they're made up of a fixed, repeating pattern of molecules that maintain their stability with zero effort. So even if you pulverize a crystal into powder, the frequency emitted never changes. So crystals are a really cool way to show us how stable energy is powerful energy, and how powerful energy influences the energies around it. And this is why I create custom pieces based on your soul blueprint, your numerology, tetralogy, or your numerology, astrology, human design, custom jewelry pieces, because these are specifically sort of designed for you, and they're never going to change. The frequency emitted will never change. This is also why an empath that is able to master and stabilize their energy can also positively influence the energies around them. When our energy is fixed, we can be very powerful against those lower vibrations. So all of that said, let's talk about some stones to amplify and enhance your positive energy. Okay. There is Amazonite, which helps balance emotions. Amethyst connects you to your higher self. Citrine acts as a re-energizer of your energy field. Clear quartz can amplify your personal energy. Fluorite assists in confidence and setting healthy boundaries. Hematite is great for soothing emotions and helps you to stay centered. Lapis lazuli is an empowering stone that can help empaths and intuitives tap into higher levels of intuitive guidance. And of course, rose quartz soothes the heart chakra and has a strong and steady energy to help stay emotionally grounded. Crystals are gorgeous. They feel amazing to wear, and they're a lot of fun to shop for and collect. There are so many different ways in which they can be used. It really comes down to personal preference. Okay, but they are not magic beans. That's the most important thing. So, how do I recommend that you use them? Well, I recommend you wear them as jewelry so that they are actually in your personal energy field on your physiological body. You can use them in meditation and when setting intentions. You can place them around your home or work to help stabilize the frequency around you. They make wonderful gem essences when mixed with essential oil or water, except for the stones ending in ite, like selenite, angelite, etc. These stones can rust or dissolve, but more importantly, the resulting water could become toxic. And it's a general rule, since there are always exceptions. But do your research before making gem essences. There's a ton of information out there about what you can use and what you shouldn't. And I'm shocked at how many people actually make gem essences with stones that become toxic when they liquefy. Okay, clearing and recharging crystals. So again, remember, I am looking at this from the science, and those fixed frequencies are fixed. So clearing and recharging them, it's not necessary. And honestly, you're going to get people that will die on this hill and argue and say, yes, it is, healers, all that stuff. And that's great. Boo. You do you. I'm telling in my opinion, based on my knowledge, clearing and recharging crystals, it's not necessary because the science does not support the need to do so. Bathe them in moonlight and sunshine because you enjoy the ritual. Stones don't lose or collect energy and therefore don't require cleansing, clearing, or charging. Again, they're made up of a fixed repeating geometric pattern of molecules that maintain their structure with zero effort. But putting them out in the moonlight or making moon water, it's so fun. It's just do it for the fun of it. All right, the last topic that I want to touch on is empaths and the need to relax, refresh, and recharge. So one empath can single-handedly raise the vibration in a room, enhance harmony in a group, and soothe the heart of a friend. One empath. But to do that, we need to be centered, grounded, and free of stress. Empaths need time to recharge. Introverts much more so than extroverts. As channels, we have a lot of energy moving through our body, and it can cause us to feel drained and overwhelmed. And that's why it's so important to spend time doing things that you love. When you are recharging, do things you enjoy. Maybe you enjoy naps. That's great. But also, alone time means peace and quiet. So meditate, practice mindfulness, grounding, connecting to the earth, yoga, biking, hiking, or other physical activities. But my absolute favorite is creative practices, hobbies, and projects. Creativity, because when you are being creative, you're tapping into that inspiration, which is directly connected to source, and you are channeling source energy. All right, so make sure that you give yourself the space to relax, refresh, and recharge. So that's it. That's everything that I know about empaths. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, subscribe to my newsletter, or join my Facebook group, Spiritual Tetralogy, to get notified of future classes, both in person and virtual. And if you love this audio and you want to continue your intuitive empowerment journey, be sure to listen to my audio workshop for intuitives that will drop coming up here in a couple weeks in late October. Thank you so much, and I have loved talking with you. If you have any questions about this, please send me an email from my website, joefigueras.com. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.